And so welcome to episode 25 of Teh Tarik with Walid. We have Mr. PN Balji hopefully with us tonight. So there have been some technical difficulties on his end, but hopefully we should have rectified that. He just gave me an Instagram call. So we will be discussing the state of the media today, and if we have time, we'll go on the generational divide on race. So Mr. Balji was formerly the editor of the new paper and today. So he's been there, done that as far as the media scene in Singapore is concerned. So I've already told him. And yesterday he also did a practice session with me, but he said yesterday is yesterday, today is today. What narrowly having escaped a TikTok dance. I don't know, John Lin, whether you are a football fan, but if you watch that game, I don't know how you can say it's narrowly escaped. England was never gonna win that game, so I mean, I knew that from the start. So people who didn't know that, I mean, they were deluding themselves, thinking that England could have won the tournament. But anyway, about politics today. Football is a secular sport. Please don't bring politics into it. So yes,
That's my grandson here.
okay. Hello. Thank you so much for helping us.
What will we do without grandsons? Okay.
Indeed. Yeah. So so I think just a bit. Okay. This is good. This
Is it
good.
okay
All
now?
right. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So I
Okay.
can hear you
Yeah,
well.
go ahead,
So
yeah.
so thank you
Sorry
so much
for this.
for doing this. No
Yeah, sorry
problem.
about
No
this.
problem. It's great that you agreed to do this in the first place. Okay, so I introduced you just now, and you basically are one of the gurus of media in Singapore, right? You've been there, done
Yeah.
that, right? So I wanted
That's
to
right.
get your
That is why I keep my white goatee still on.
yes.
Because people like you describe me as a guru.
Makes you look wiser as well, wiser
don't
than you
know.
already are. Yeah. So
I don't know. Yeah.
so let's start off with the media, right? So
Sure,
my first
sure.
question is, people like yourself, and maybe less yourself, maybe somebody like Bertha, are very critical of the media as we know it today, right? Or as it is today. But wouldn't you say that actually in many ways the media is much better today than during your time when you and Bertha were actually involved in the media? Wouldn't you say that? Wouldn't you say that the media scene today is actually less compliant or pliant, and it's more critical of the government in very limited ways, of course, but just comparatively compared to the past? So does that mean that actually the criticisms would ring hollow, right? What do you think about it?
Oh, you are worse than the BBC journalist. Never mind. I'll try and answer. Are you referring to mainstream media? Or
Yes,
are you referring to
mainstream.
all media?
No, mainstream media, not
right? Okay.
online. Yeah,
Let me
not
answer.
alternative.
Let me try and answer that question. I think there are many things that when you look at media. Since I've had the experience of having worked in media since 1970. 70, not 1917.
Wow.
70.
Yeah.
Better make that clear. No, anyway, that I think we had a few things. I'll be the first one to say, yes, we were under the control of the government. There's no running away from it. After the 1974 Newspaper Presses Printing Act, the control became more or less established. And I think knowing this government well enough, legislation alone is not enough for them. They wanted everything watertight. So what did they go for? They went to make sure that the executive chairman of SPH was a former senior minister. And the CEO is a former top civil servant, right? So all these controls were there, But the one big factor, I think, I don't have much inside knowledge of mainstream media today, but from what I picked up, from what I see, from what I've spoken to people in the media, I think the one big difference is that the editors of that time, there was a lot of pushing and shoving during that time. even with people like Lee Kuan Yew. And I have put in some detail of those, for want of a better word, confrontations in the book. Right? Yes.
book,
Thank you very
yes.
much. Thank you very much. So I have detailed that I've detailed that somewhat. And there were journalists, especially there were editors, who would, even when Lee Kuan Yew was at his rogue best, there were editors pushing, When I mean pushing, I don't mean that they will go and shout at Lee Kuan Yew, but put up reasons why, that this should not be done this way. And there have been occasions when Lee Kuan Yew said, no, I want you to do it this way. And these discussions are all going on with the press secretary at that time, James Fu. And these discussions were going on, and there were occasions when Lee Kuan Yew will say no, and the editor, whoever is dealing with Lee Kuan Yew at that time, would try and explain why this should not be done this way, because it's not good for the government, it's not good for the media. And there have been occasions, not many occasions, but there have been occasions when the editor went against the Lee Kuan Yew order. Right? So I think that's the point. And that, to me, is the big difference in the media then and the media today. Also, I think my last chapter in the book is, to me, the most important chapter. And I call it, the title is Last of the Mohicans. I believe that type of editors are no more there, and I don't think we will have them anymore, I mentioned 3 editors. I'm not going to give the names because I want you all to go and buy the book.
Yes. And this is it's an extremely fascinating book. So when I read it in maybe 3 or 4 days, because I really couldn't put it down. So it was a very, very good piece of writing. So Mr. Balji, you are saying this with inside knowledge, right? So you know what went on with the editors and the pushing back and all of that.
Yeah.
But from the reader or the average Singaporean, right, people like myself, when we read, right, we do not know what goes on, and we can only judge by what we see, right? And what we see, that today at least you see articles that are more critical of the government as compared to maybe 20 years ago, right? There are some things that you see today that I remember Han Fook Kwang writing an article about the Oxley Road incident, the house, and I felt, wow, I cannot imagine Straits Times, right, publishing this maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, right? So from the reader, do you think it's fair for the reader to make the judgment that actually the media today is better than the media during that?
Yeah, I agree with your point that you cannot expect the readers to know, right, what actually went on, right? That is why if you read Chong Ip Seng's book, which is the former editor-in-chief,
Yeah. The tell-all
O.B.
book.
Marcus, my Straits Times story, he gives enough examples of where the push and the shove happened. I have also given some examples, not that many, but and you're right, because until Chong Ip Seng wrote that book, for which he paid a price, but until he wrote that book, Singapore journalists have this very, very bad habit of taking their stories to the graveyard.
Right.
Not so much the Western journalists. The Western journalists will always write, and even journalists in Indonesia, for example, But the Singapore journalists somehow never got down to writing what actually went on. And I think Chong Ip Seng's book and my book are 2 books that have been written about, if you want to call it, the inside story of media or the struggles with government. So
Right.
I can understand why people, the reader, would have that impression, especially the reader who has come onto the scene now. If a reader has been from the 1970s, 1960s, I think that reader should have a good idea, And I would like to say that I'm not in any way saying that we don't have the present media is not serious enough in taking on the government in a constructive way. But I think that is the commentary part, But if you look at the reporting, it will be so skewed, to give a positive light, especially the reporting of today.
Right.
And that's what most people read. Your commentaries are only read maybe by 5%, 10% of the people, but it is a reporting that is very important. And I think the reporting has standards has gone down a lot, and that is also because of the lack of talent in the newsroom. Since 2011, after the 2011 elections, and after the editor of the Straits Times at that time, Han Fu Kwang, had to step down because his coverage of the elections of 2011 was one of the fairest that I've ever seen. And he paid a price.
So he had to step down because of that?
Yeah, he had to step down because of that. And a new editor came. And can you imagine the newsroom seeing all these things happening? Do they want to take on the government in any way? And what did Han Fu Kwang do? As far as I'm concerned, from what I know, he made the coverage fair, which means big picture of Teo Chee Hean on page 1, and the same size picture of Lau Tia Kiang also on page 1. Is that wrong? I don't think so. And he paid a price, right? So I'm saying there are so many issues involved, in this trying to make the comparison, And as I said earlier, I think the comparison should also include news stories, So you take as an example, right? Today, I think today's story about our economic growth, the recently released statistics showed quite a good figure, double-digit figure. So it looked like very good statistics, But if you read the story, it says that we started the huge increase in GDP figure is because of the low GDP figure the last time round. So it's from a very low base. But an ordinary reader reading it will have to come down to the 6th paragraph maybe to understand this story. So that is what I am saying. That's where the big difference is.
Right. So I guess I have two responses to that. Right. So one, maybe in life we in general we tend to have we have a tendency to romanticize the past, right? So I'm really trying to think whether it was the reporting really that much better 10-15 years ago. And okay, I know for sure the sports reporting was very good for the newspaper. I bought the newspaper as a teenager only for football, only for that.
Not for the salacious stories.
No. I know you did refer to that in the book, but for the football, excellent. Edwin Yeo, I remember I used to look forward to his columns. But I don't know whether news reporting was that much better than today. So that's the first thing. The second thing you said, the bad tendency of journalists to bring their stories to the grave, right? Well, I understand. I would love more journalists to write. I would love more people to write in general, right? But then there is also a school of thought which says, yeah, if you didn't say all of that when you had the power to do so, why do you say all of that now? It just seems like you are bitter or you have an agenda or whatever it is, right? Because a person's test is when they are actually in a position of power, right?
Yeah, I have a few friends. I'm not sure whether I can call them friends, but they are friends.
Anymore?
And they, at the launch of my book, a couple of them came up to me and says, "Oh, so you old journalists all are seeking redemption now." right? So I just laughed it off. I think it is not really redemption. Anyway, I don't think we are going to get redemption. But the point is that we did, and I think that the fundamental. Let's not forget the fundamental. The fundamental is that the government controls the media. If you want to fight the media directly, then you must be prepared, one, for you to be sacked. And I'm sure Walid, Jumblatt, Abdullah is not going to give me a job after I get sacked, or NUS is going to give me a job. But let's put it, and there's no other place that a Singapore journalist can go and look for work. It's just the SPH or
Right.
MediaCorp. Right? Where can I go? Where else can others go? And that I can talk about that a bit later. But that is a Lee Kuan Yew genius. But I can talk about that later. But I'm coming to the point that, and your question is very good. I wish that many of the journalists would ask questions like you asked. That why couldn't you all do anything about it? We did. A lot of it was behind the scenes, right? And if we come out and write about these things, we might as well give up, So we believe, or not, I won't say we, but some of us believe that maybe the better way will be in all the discussions with the cabinet, with the ministers, to try and continue to beat the point that the more you control us, the more our circulation will go down.
Right.
It's not beneficial to you, and it's now being proven right because we have a social media there, right? And look at the Straits Times circulation,
Right.
And look at now they have to form a new company, right? Straits Times is practically with a begging bowl,
Right. So thanks. Well, you are right. So Walid, Jumblatt, Abdullah cannot give you a job. Right? Walid, Jumblatt, Abdullah is lucky to have a job himself. Right? So, but what you just said, surely the government also knows that, right? That the more it controls the media, the more, or it is perceived to control the media. It doesn't matter whether it controls, but it is perceived to control the media. The more the media credibility will go down, and therefore circulation will go down, and the media would go, the company can go bust, right? So if we realize that, surely the government knows that also, right? So good
question again. Yeah. This is the mystifying part about the government's involvement in media. I have not found an answer. I personally have, met ministers and have told them, that, over time, the credibility of the media will be affected. And this was a few years ago. And let me also say that at that time, the Straits Times, especially the Straits Times, the SPH group, was doing so well in terms of money.
But that was pre-social media, right? Was that pre-social media?
Yes, pre-social media. So, but now social media has come into the picture and has changed everything, right? So what the government is, I think, trying to do is to try and control the social media. So POFMA comes in and many other forms, right? But there's another interesting story, that is developing, and that is even the social media. By that I would include internet media, newspapers on the internet, solely on the internet. If you go and examine those outlets, just go and find out, not all of them, but the more critical ones, how much of government advertising is in these companies, right? So they are using kind of the money route to control the media, right? So I was just told, was it earlier this week, by a young reporter working for one of the media outlets, that now the editors are trying to control the reporters. The reason is because they are getting revenue from the government, right? So this, I don't have the answer to your question. I really don't have the answer, but this mystifies me. because
Right.
this is not a stupid government.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
smart, intelligent government. Why can't they see this through? Maybe they know something which I don't know.
Right. Okay. So how then can the media regain credibility? If the picture you paint, I mean, I think the picture you paint is largely accurate, right? So what can the media do? Or is it
I
just
think
is it basically a structural thing? It's just because social media and alternative media have come up. So it's not so much that the Straits Times is seen to be pro-government. It's not that, but it's just the alternative of. It's just
no,
that
I
you have
think
more alternatives. Yeah.
no, I think it's both because you are seen to be. I mean, being pro-government is okay. You are a very good government. Why not be pro? But you cannot write articles, present articles in such a way that looks so pro-government, right? A minister, a couple of years ago, I was invited for breakfast with a minister. I was very reluctant to go, so I gave all kinds of excuses. So the PR person came back and said, gave me another date. Then I said, I got a doctor's appointment. Then the third time came back and said, you give a date. Smart, huh? You give me a date and the minister will be there. So anyway, I decided to go. And I was very clear in my mind what I should tell the minister. So I went there, I told the minister, look, if you don't allow the media, see, the media is not anti-Singapore. I don't believe anyone in the media are trying to subvert Singapore. I think they're all generally pro-Singapore. So, and I told him one of the things, that can you please tell your ministers to stop talking? Because whenever they talk, they are saying the same old thing. You read the newspapers. If you read it closely, you will see, right? They're saying the same old thing which they said 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But the media reports it as a page lead. And what does that mean? Because a person like me who is interested in media, who is interested in news, who try to read the newspaper as thoroughly as possible, I just flip the page. I don't find anything new here, right? So this is where the problem is. So I'm hoping that the 4G leadership will take this up.
Why would they?
Because they are
if the previous generations have not done it, why would they?
Because if they are worth their salt, if they see that this is what the problem with media is, and this is how the media is going down the drain, then they should do something.
Well, that's why they should, right? But why would they?
I mean, I'm not paid $1 million to answer that question, but basically I'm saying, if I were a leader, if I agree, you must agree first. You see, this is the problem, right?
Right.
This is not going to be good, not just for Singapore. It's not going to be good for the government because if people start not reading you, then what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I definitely share your aspiration. I hope they do see that as well. So there are a couple of comments, people speculating which website you're talking about. I urge people to just read the comments because I don't want to say anything libelous, but that was what I was thinking as well. Anyway, so that's for the media. Anything else you wanted to say on the media before we move on?
It depends on your question.
Okay. So those are my questions.
Maybe I want to. I briefly mentioned about the genius of Lee Kuan Yew.
Sure.
I've just written a commentary for a journalism publication on the restructure of SPH, and in doing that, I went around talking to people, some of them about my age, and
so 30 plus, 35, 36.
My age. Your age. In fact, you are humiliating me. I'm below that. Never mind. I'm just to put the record straight. I'm 73 years old. I'm 73 years old.
Oh wow.
No, but people maybe 10 years below me, who I thought would know a lot about media, and I asked them one question. I said, "Do you know that the Straits Times is 176 years old today, this year?" They said, no, I didn't know. People who have worked in media. No? So 176 years old, which is longer than the PAP government. You know, the rich history that the Straits Times has.
Right.
It's an institution. You know? So anyway, Lee Kuan Yew knew that. Lee Kuan Yew knew that the Straits Times is such an important vehicle for his party.
Absolutely.
And do you know that in the 1959 elections, when PAP was fighting for the first time, the top group, the top editorial and management crew campaigned against the PAP. And when PAP won in 1959, this group of people all ran to KL to produce the paper, the Straits Times, from KL.
Right.
And then maybe 6 months later, they all came back to Singapore because they know money is in Singapore. You see? I think that was the greatest. That is something that Lee Kuan Yew learned. Journalists can say this and say that and talk about freedom of the press and whatever, but at the end of it, money is important.
Right.
And the Straits Times made good money, you know, which was, and Lee Kuan Yew knew that. And Lee Kuan Yew knew that as long as the economy prospered, the Straits Times will prosper because they have no competition. Whether I like it or not, I have to buy the Straits Times.
Right.
Now it's different, you know.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I think that's we spent about half an hour on the media. So thanks. I really appreciate your insights. I wanted to move on to some other topics. So this is still slightly related to the media, but it's about a broader issue as well. So I've seen a couple of your interviews and maybe more than a couple, but I also follow Bertha a lot. And one of the things that, I mean, the two of you are quite similar in many ways, but one of the ways in which you are very similar is both of you pride in being the middle ground, right? And this is somewhat basically placing yourself between two extremes. Like one is anything the government says is bad, like those critics. And then the other side is anything the government does or says is good, right? So while I get that, but don't you think middle ground is just a synonym for not taking a side? It's for sitting on the fence. And also it's a bit of posturing and sometimes can result in pontificating. Oh, look, I am superior because I am in the middle, whereas you guys are so extreme. Do you think that would be a fair criticism of people who identify themselves as middle ground?
I will answer that question very directly. It's a totally unfair criticism.
Okay.
Let me explain. You know? I mean, after that, you can decide for yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
The intention in writing, I can't speak for Bertha, and even if I do speak for her, she'll be very upset. You know? But let me speak for myself.
Sure.
That middle path is what Singapore needs now. We don't have a middle path, right? And what do I mean by the middle path? By the middle path, I mean you write, if it's a commentary, you write something which will give both sides of the story, right? You will when you're criticizing or you're writing a critical analysis, I'm sure you are well aware of it. All academics do it. And so I want to present both sides of the story, but finally take a position which may be pro-government or anti-government. That's what I'm trying to do, right? So the analysis or the commentary will be written not in an extreme form, but if you read the commentary, you will see that what we are trying to achieve is, I mean, I think Singapore society cannot be, and when it is especially related to media, it cannot be very polarized, you know. There must be something that people will say that is intelligent. I mean, the person that comes to my mind is Tommy Coe. He doesn't take left or right, but when he says something, there's a lot of validity to what he says. Some of them are criticism of government, right? He had campaigned against minimum wage. No, he campaigned
for minimum
wage.
For minimum wage, yeah.
Right. So, but does he write in a way that with extreme language. He doesn't, right? Sometimes too diplomatically, because he's a diplomat, right? But I think that's a kind of, we need more people, you know? And I'm so glad that there are people now, more and more I see, people like Cherry and George, people like
So
Donald.
you consider Chiran and Donald these middle ground people?
I think so. I
Okay.
think so. But
Right.
I think they do it with a lot of academic research and backgrounding, you know, which I don't do, because I don't think the readers want that kind of, at least the kind of readers I write for. You know?
Right.
So there will always be the Cherian reader. So what I'm saying is, but look at academia.sg. That's a new one. You write for academia.sg. Do you sit on the middle or take a position on the left or on the right?
Right. So,
I think generally, no, this is good. I feel it's good. More and more comes. It's a discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think thanks for that clarification, because I think I understand my understanding of middle ground probably wasn't the same as yours. So because a lot of people wouldn't consider Chiran and Donald as middle ground, even though yeah. So I think then.
But I don't know whether they will consider themselves as middle ground. But that's a separate issue.
I think for me they are credible because their writings are solid and well backed. So whether you agree is a different matter, but they are credible. So but what about some cases where there are no both sides? What are the both sides to present? Sometimes there isn't just, because sometimes I feel like people do the both sides thing to get out of taking a stance on difficult issues, right?
No. So your question is, people say,
because you said, you started off just now, like your approach would be you write side A and then side B, and then you say what your stand is, right? But sometimes there are no both sides, right? One side is clearly, sometimes, not most times, but sometimes one side is clearly, this is the better position, right? So Fiacra says climate change, for instance. There are no both sides to climate change, right? Yeah. So
I see where you're coming from. I think that to say that there's only one side, I think that's quite dangerous. Even in that one side, that we all agree that climate change is important, right? But within that, what are the right things to do?
Right. So and there's a proper debate to be had. Yeah.
That's right. So what is what the Singapore government doing towards climate change?
Right.
Is that the right strategy? Or if I want to take it in a slightly different position, has Singapore come on a bit too late to climate change, knowing that we, being an island, we are very susceptible to climate change, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's fair. I think we are in agreement on that. So the next question is question I saw, and this is maybe we are moving towards disagreement. So when I caught your interview last, this was done 2 months ago. This was very fascinating interview. I enjoyed it. But so the interviewer was asking you, your friend, right? So he asked you, do you consider yourself a privileged Indian in Singapore? And you said you don't like the word privilege because you believe you have earned whatever you have earned in life, right? So by rejecting the word privilege, right, don't you think you are buying too much into the meritocratic myth, right? Because you are extremely privileged, right? You are privileged to have a very supportive wife. You're extremely privileged to have had certain factors in life that align for you, that someone else who works hard or who works as hard or who works even harder may not achieve the same success as you have, right? So I guess, I know this may sound like nitpicking, but I think it goes to a broader philosophical point, right? Why do you reject the usage of the term privileged?
I don't think I'm privileged, because you said that a lot of people work very hard. You should know how hard I worked. When in the 1960s, my father was a trade union leader, in the naval base, in the former British naval base in Sembawang, and he organized a strike which lasted for a couple of months, and we had no food on the table. And this visuals will stick with me, I think, for the rest of my life. When a relative came to my house, and when he realized that, we were because we had no money, right? No pay. And he gave me, I was a young boy, he gave me $5. And they left. And I could see the joy in my mother's face. And she said, quickly go and buy rice. That's not a privileged life. So what I'm getting at is that there was a period when times were so difficult. I will also tell you, when I joined Straits Times Press, 1970, the salary was $250 and $60 transport allowance. There were occasions when money was not enough for the home, for my mother, for my father, for my brother, and other extended members of the family. And I was the sole contributor. I had to walk from Upper Thompson Road, where Casuarina Curry is today, all the way to Kim Seng Road. Because I said, I'm not going to spend money on transport. That cannot be a privileged life.
But you said you had both parents, right? And both parents imparted many values to you, right?
I mean, I don't know about parents these days, but I think parents then don't impart values. You watch them and what they do, and then you take,
and
like an osmosis.
That's a huge privilege, right? Because if you had a different set of parents, that wouldn't have happened, right? Probably.
Maybe.
So
Yeah.
that's my point, right? So that's my point. You said you had to work hard, and my dad used to work 20 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating, for 30 years of his life, right?
Sure.
But my first drawn salary was 3 times higher than his highest ever, right?
Sure.
I can guarantee you, I didn't work as hard as he did. I've never worked as hard as he did in his entire life, right? So, I mean, I think I work hard, but I would never say I'm not privileged, right? Because if I didn't have that debt, I wouldn't be who I am. That illiterate debt, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I'm super privileged. I'm not privileged. I wasn't privileged financially then, but I'm super privileged to have that dad and that mom. Because if I didn't so my point is, there are many other people who didn't even know the value of hard work or a work ethic because they had a different set of parents, for instance, or because certain circumstances in life didn't align.
Sure.
And why is this important? Because I think sometimes we have bought into the meritocratic myth so much such that we fail to see that where people end up in life sometimes is not a consequence of their own actions. Would you disagree with that?
I agree with that. With that. I have up close and personal experiences, mainly because my wife has started a charity 10 years ago, and so I have some experience, And I still remember 10 years ago, she told me to take her to Sterling Road, a rental flat. She's going to meet somebody, So I told her, look, she said she will drive. I said, no, I will drive you. And I drove her. I think she spent maybe half an hour in that rental flat. She came. She was just tearing because she never realized that in Singapore we have such people living under such conditions. So I am lucky in that sense because of her association with these sad cases. So I am, in that sense, I am privileged. I'm privileged to know these stories, and I'm also privileged that in the sense that whenever I can, I help. Not in money terms, because I don't think money is the root. I think you must find a real solution to their problems, which I don't think we are doing now, or not enough of.
Okay. So thank you for that. I just wanted to discuss that because I think it relates broadly to our societal societal attitudes towards people who are less well off, right? So okay, so the topic of of the month, right, or of the year, perhaps, is race. So, what are your thoughts broadly? Because you have done quite a few, you have spoken quite a bit on this, and what are your thoughts generally on what is going on? And do you notice that do you believe there is a generational shift in terms of how your generation viewed race versus how the younger people,
I
myself, and
think,
people even younger than me? Yeah.
okay, I think there is a difference in the way we see race, religion, but also I think there is no difference, because I mean, I'm sure I might be accused of being a racist here. I think we cannot run away from the fact that there is a certain racial affinity. So when I'm walking outside and when I see an Indian foreign worker, I will look at him. I will stand there and talk to him. But if I see from another race, it's very unlikely I will talk to him because I think that he cannot talk the language. Maybe I can talk in Tamil, to the Indian worker. So I think that part of it is always there, right? And of course I'm glad to see that we have more interracial marriages, but it's very difficult to say you must marry somebody else from the other race,
Right.
So I
I
think
agree with this. Yeah.
no, I think these things are there.
Right.
But having said that, I think my generation or my father's generation, we had hardly any time to think about race. I remember when I was living in the naval base in Sembawang, it was my job to every Deepavali to take all the goodies that my mother had made, put it on a tray, cover it up, and take to my non-Indian neighbors. As I was growing up, I hated it. I hated it not because I said, why I must do all this, but I did it, And the other good thing was that every time I gave them the tray, they always put some money inside. So there was money for me, So I think that, no, that's one. And I think it's a kind of living, the kind of, we never really saw color, of the skin as an issue, I don't know why it is. Is it because of we had no time to think about this, or is it because of games? Because we all play football. It doesn't matter whether you are Indian or you are Chinese. We still got together and played football. Could it be that? And I just give you an anecdote, which my son-in-law text last week sent to the family chat. He said we had a great time. He took both his sons to Juro Lake Gardens, and he said I was so impressed with the boys because they were helping a Chinese family, because they were having some issues, and this guy, without even being prompted by his father, went out to help. For him, color of the skin was not an issue, right?
Right.
I don't know whether I'm making a big issue out of it, but I think, and what has been happening in the last few months is, I think it is. I feel that it is anger, and also the key point about these incidents are these are the incidents against Indians. I've not really read something about the Chinese, or I've not read anything against the Malays, for example. So I think, and I think that the fact that there have been so many Indians who have come out from outside Singapore in the last 10 years, 15 years, our population has gone up. The Indian population has gone up from 7 to 9%. So I think there is a resentment against the Indians.
Right. So you think this is actually more xenophobia than racism?
I think so.
Okay. Right. So I mean, there's a lot in what you say, right? So the experience you mentioned about in the past we didn't. Okay, so first of all, on the football part, I agree. I think the moment void deck football was disallowed, I think that was a step back for multiracialism in Singapore. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely
I
believe that.
think so too. I
Yeah.
think so
Okay.
too.
Yeah. So, but the color blindness, right? Is that really true? Because the seniors in my family, right, my parents and my uncles, right, whenever they speak about, these are people your age, right? When they speak about race and racism, they speak about it with a lot of resentment, right? So they are Indians, they look Indians, we are Indian Muslims, but we look Indian, so we always get even me, right? We always get the the jokes, the racist comments associated with Indians. Like one of my relatives stopped going to school because she was caught culling all the time.
Really,
So
yeah.
she stopped going to school. And this is not 10 years ago. This is 50, 60 years ago. So is that really true? Is it just that today people are more willing to not tolerate racist comments or racist jokes, or is it there is a vocabulary that people can also use to articulate resentment against that, and also there's an outlet which is social media. So I'm always very
Mm.
skeptical of claims that, oh, last time we used to be colorblind, and then suddenly out of nowhere this thing happened, because it doesn't seem, even when we were playing football, right, when we were growing up, when we played football, right, the easiest way to divide the teams is Chinese versus Malays. And then the Indians will go with Malays, right? So at every stage in life, it seems like race was always a feature, even when people were doing things that were multiracial. So how is it that people like yourself and even your interviewer, right, was saying he repeated it a few times when he was growing up, he was colorblind. And I always feel like what you mean is actually when you were growing up, your color didn't affect you. It's not that you are colorblind. So you cannot tell me that you look at a person and then you don't see race, right? Because I feel like it's impossible if you grow. I mean, I think generally it's hard to make a case anywhere that you don't see race, but especially in Singapore, also in countries where race is institutionalized, I find it hard to believe that people can be or are colorblind. What do you think?
No, okay. Let me. I think that's what I said, right? Maybe the use of the term colorblind, is not maybe is not the right term.
Right.
I started off by saying that when
Yes.
I go out, I will look at it. If there's an Indian, I will look at the Indian.
Right.
But
Right. Right. Right.
the point is whether what to me the more critical question is race. The point is racism. That
Right.
will I and racism. I checked the dictionary before coming here. Racism means you are discriminating according to color.
Right.
To me, that's very important. You see?
Right.
And I have asked this when I was in newspaper and today, even in Straits Times, when I had to do interviews for journalists or promotions for journalists. I've asked myself this question: what happens if I have two people coming for an interview? Both of them are equally good. They check all the boxes. Yeah, one is Indian, one is Chinese. Who will I choose?
You will choose the Chinese, right? As in, because I know this, and I actually buy your reasoning, because you are eager to prove as a minority that you are not favoring minorities.
Exactly. And I can tell you, without naming names, one chap who was a PAP likely candidate who was interviewed one of the very senior ministers many years ago, who gave the answer which I gave, and he said, no, and said, you're not fit to be an MP. Right? But
That's a good.
that's his
That's
true
a good thing,
feeling.
right? Isn't that a good thing? If
What
some
is a good thing?
that somebody who thinks like that should not hold public office, for instance, you think that's inevitable? Is it that minorities will
No,
feel
no,
like
no.
that because they need to
No,
compensate?
I'm saying that the minorities are always conscious of
Ah,
the
right,
majority,
right, right,
right?
right, right,
I
right, right,
mean,
right, right, right.
let me give you an example. Anyway, a lot of my friends are upset with me for saying this previously, that I think as a minority, and a small minority, I'm talking about Indians, it is very important to keep the Chinese majority and not make them feel threatened. I can give you a couple of examples, right? Many years ago in Fiji, when the Indians won the election, what happened? The military, there was a coup. Look at Malaysia, right? What happened when the Chinese party, DAP, won Penang? What happened? Racial riots, right? So I believe that to keep the peace, I'm not saying that you don't raise issues, but you don't raise it in a way which the majority will feel threatened, because I think then it's trouble.
Okay, what if the majority is threatened, or some members of the majority is threatened by the mere fact that the issue is brought up? Not any way, but the fact that is brought up.
Brought up by whom?
Brought up by the minorities. Okay. So maybe that matters as well. Who brings it up?
Yeah. Who brings it up?
So if it's,
I mean, it's a very complicated issue, you know. And again, I give you an example from we starting new paper, 1988. So I was in a group of people because we wanted journalists. We couldn't find good journalists, not good, but we couldn't find enough journalists in Singapore. So one of the countries that we went to recruit was Indian journalists. We went to New Delhi, and Walid, it's in my book, some of the finest journalists we could ever find were the Indian journalists. So we recruited maybe about 10 or 11 people, and they were the best, not just in writing skills, their experience, but their attitude. They were prepared to work. Now, when they came in, there was talk in SPH that I was running an Indian mafia. I've never forgotten that. Of course, not directly to me, but I've kind of heard it. But after that, after the new paper journalists came and some of them left, the Straits Times and the Business Times began to recruit journalists from India. So they saw the value of these journalists, you see. So this is what race is all about. But when I heard all these things, I didn't make a big hoo-ha about it. This is a guy who plays football, right?
Yes, he does. He does play football.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's okay. So I didn't want to make a big issue out of it. I said, let these chaps prove it. And they proved it more than enough. You know? So there are so many of these examples. You know? I still wonder why these journalists, who are mainly Chinese, were talking bad about the journalists from India. And these are not your scums of society, you know. They're intelligent people, right? So if intelligent people can talk like that, then what about the others?
Right. So I think on that we are in agreement, right? But then how does that square with what you just said? Because the fact that you brought in those 10 or 11, right, that threatens the majority, right? But you still did it because that was the right thing to do. So,
no, there's a backstory to it, and it's a very interesting backstory.
Okay,
the person who wanted us to go to India to recruit the journalists and made all the arrangements was S.R. Nathan, who was our executive chairman. Right? Of course, I didn't go and tell the SPH journalists this. You know, I didn't think it was right.
Right.
So it was not my decision to go to India, but it was S.R. Nathan who pushed us to go to India.
Right. Okay. So did you reveal that in the book? That it was S.R. Nathan?
I think
you did. Okay.
I did, yeah.
I thought I got a scoop. But anyway, so
what is the book and what you're going to say later is still a scoop because not many people have read this stuff.
Okay. So then let's push that idea further, right? Because if it's about appeasing or not upsetting the majority, what if a non-Chinese prime minister upsets the majority or seemingly threatens their position? So should that be abandoned? I'm just asking, where do we draw the line between with not offending, if not offending the majority or some, because the majority is also not a monolith, right? There's some members of the majority. should that be the criteria for how we go about doing things, or should we go about
No,
doing
I don't
things?
think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think I still feel very passionately that we need talent. Whether it is, it should be beyond a race. So we need the talent, but you have to be careful. And in my if the editor of the newspaper at that time in 1988 was a Chinese and not me, an Indian, would that kind of a talk have happened in
No,
SPH?
no.
See, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a complicated situation. It's really a complicated situation. So they see this, and sometimes journalists are great at passing a snide remark, because then they have scored a victory. You see, and when you read journalist articles, you will know that there's always one word. They twist that one word.
Right. There's a lot of meaning in one word or one sentence, right?
Yes.
So I guess my worry is if we use the sensibilities of a majority to be because so there are also different circumstances with regard to the two countries you mentioned, right? Fiji, I believe the population of Indians is about what, 35 to 40%.
No, at that time, I think, I'm not sure. I think it was reaching 50%.
Okay. So it's very high. So in Malaysia also it's about 60-40, right? So it's pretty high. But in Singapore it's 75 to 77 versus 25.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of what could the minorities possibly do to threaten the majority.
You could
other than feelings of of being protective. I mean, what could substantially be taken away in that sense, right?
Okay, I can immediately think of.
Sure.
If you suddenly find a lot of which has happened, suddenly a lot of Indians in the banking sector, suddenly a lot of Indians in the IT sector, a sudden influx of such people, and that will threaten the Chinese, right? Because they say, hey, how come so many Indians? Why can't I do this job? So I think it can happen in a not in a total population, but in sectoral ways.
But earlier you said that is more about xenophobia than about racism, right?
No, before I go into that, but nobody complained about, at least as far as I know, nobody complained about how come got so many Malays in the Singapore football team, right? I've heard whispers. How come all the balls are passed? All the balls are passed to Fandi Ahmad, and nobody passes to Sundram.
That's not true. I mean,
it is true.
Sundram did get the ball a lot.
You were too young not to know that. I was in the National Stadium all the matches. Okay, all the matches. Anyway,
I defer to your expertise on that. But I mean, I grew up with a poster of Fandi and Sundram, in my room. My siblings did that as well. We had the 1994 Dream Team poster. So I guess I get what you're saying. So the football team doesn't threaten the livelihoods of people.
Yeah, it's not livelihood, right?
So whereas the other thing,
because the Chinese don't want to join the national team,
right?
Because they say, what's the point? What do I gain? What money do I gain?
Right. So when there are things which threaten the livelihoods, that would be.
I'm sure it'll happen. Maybe not in a big way, but the murmurs will be there, the whispers will be there.
But what if the minorities actually deserve to be there? Should they then not be there because it may upset other people?
Well,
let's say we had a minority as the editor of the newspaper, right? Should he not take up that? Should he not take up? Yeah, exactly. Should he not take up the position because some people may be offended by that? So, I guess I mean, where do we draw the
Okay.
line if we are going to
It's
use
a,
people's offense? People are going to be offended at anything.
yeah. I think it's good that you raised the newspaper example. I think I was again very fortunate in having editors who decided that and the editors who are my bosses were Chinese. And they never looked at it from a race angle. Never. Both times, in a newspaper. And when I moved on to today I was the editor-in-chief, also picked by a Chinese.
Right.
So what does that tell you? So your question is, then should I be wary, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an Indian.
Yeah.
I was wary.
Okay.
I was wary, at the back of my mind. This thing was there at the back of my mind.
Right. So you were always cautious that what your ethnicity will be used against you.
Yep, of course.
Okay.
Because as we brought in sub-editors from India, and some of the journalists who came to work from Singapore were also Indians.
Right.
So there was this perception. So I had to be extremely careful.
Right. So there's a very interesting comment by Monica. The problem is there was no outburst in the 90s when most of the expats were Caucasian living in condos. Nobody talked about a ghettoization of condos, right? But when it's Indian expats, then people talk about, oh, there are ethnic enclaves, right? So isn't that not just about xenophobia? Isn't that actually racism?
Well, I think we must not forget. I'm now treading into troubled waters. We must not forget that somehow, even till today, not as much, we have a fascination with the whites. Right? I mean, I grew up in the naval base, British naval base, right? And I've seen, that when we talk to the whites, of course, not that much, somehow we take on that accent, So there was always this romance,
right?
if you can call it, with the white man, And of course, the whole issue about the Sarong Party girl, right? So that's maybe the reason, But I would argue that now it's less so. I don't think the local Singaporeans will look at the Caucasian and consider him hybrid, for example.
Right. So you think it would still be a problem if there were expats, large numbers, Caucasians living in condos today?
I think now there will be a bigger problem.
Right.
Because they will say that these people are not as valuable. We are better. But your point about the why is it against the Indians, right? I think the answer to me is very simple: because of Sika. Because we have seen, and I'm not going to equate Sika with Indian immigration, but in the last 10-15 years, we have had huge number of Indians coming in, right? Population has gone up from 7 to 9%, mainly contributed by them. And there was a very interesting statistic, the census report. And if you look at the education level, the education level of the Indians is 41.3%.
Yeah. And it has increased dramatically over the past 2 years, and it's because of immigration.
Yeah. So the Chinese is only 30 plus.
Yeah.
So where did all this thing come from?
Yeah.
How did the educational standard of the Indians go up? I think one of the contributing factors is the immigration from India, right?
But you are saying the way you are framing the problem, it seems to me that it is a political and economic problem, which I agree there is a facet to that. But have you personally ever been asked, Mr. Balji, like, where are you originally from? Have you ever
been asked many times.
You've been asked many times. Where does that question come from? Nobody asks, a Chinese person in Singapore, where are you originally from?
Okay.
Where does that
Because
question comes from?
no,
come
I
from?
think you have to look a bit into the history, right?
Mm.
We all know that China was a closed country. So, but the Indians, there was a lot of going to India and coming back. Many of the Indians here at that time also retained their roots in India, right? And I know because I was in the naval base. So many Indians after the British pull out decided to go back to India. So the roots with India were very strong, but not the roots for the Chinese in China. And I think it is essentially to do with the political situation in China. But of course,
Yeah.
things have changed.
Yeah.
Things have
Yeah.
changed.
I'm not talking about 1960s. I'm talking about now, when people are asking where are you originally from. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I feel like that question, when that is asked, right? Or when I remember this happened 2 years ago. I was walking by a neighbor whom I used to say hi to every day, and my son will always shake her hand and kiss her hand. She's Chinese, and one day I went overseas, and then when I came back, then when I she saw me, she asked, "Hey, you went on holiday? You went to India, is it?" I said, why was that? Why was that where does that come from, right? So this is a Singaporean who knows I'm Singaporean, speaks to me every single day. My son shows her the utmost respect by kissing her hand. Yet she says that to me. This person is obviously not affected by Sika. So where does that come from? I'm saying, don't you think there's more to this than economics? Don't you think that question can only come, right, when from a place where they think that, oh, you are not Singaporean, right? Don't you think so? If you ask, where are you originally from?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. But in your case, they just asked, you went to India, right? So the perception is that on a holiday you will go to India, which is not, honestly, which is not a wrong perception.
Well,
Many,
I think it's wrong, because then she told me, oh, I went to Italy. Oh, so you can go Italy, but the only place I can go is India. Not that I don't. Thankfully, during that time, I didn't go. Otherwise, I will answer and confirm her stereotypes. I do go to India as well, but I go to other countries as well. So I do feel that perception does come from a place where, okay, you are originally Indian. So my point, the broader point is not about that story, right? So the broader point is, don't you think the racism is not just about Sika? Because prior to Sika, even Singaporean Indians get such comments all the time, right? You're a blackie, or whatever it is, whatever it is. Or do you think it's largely Sika that has caused all of this?
I feel that Sika has caused this to kind of blow up, right? And also that these Indians who have come from India, let me just take a step back. I think we have had 3 waves of immigration from India. The first one during the colonial times, when the Indians came here to build all the buildings, That's how the word killing came about,
Right.
Right? So that's the first wave. The second wave came with a lot of the Indians came with the foreign workers. Right? They came here for construction and all that. Now we are seeing the third wave. Now this third wave, we see more North Indians than South Indians.
Right.
The skin, they are fairer. They have, they are very confident of themselves. They know that if Singapore doesn't want me, I can go to Australia, I can go anywhere else. And they are bright people. I've met many of them. And I actually enjoy having discussions with them. So we have had these 3 waves of Indians. And I think that the present one is what is causing some kind of antagonism, because they are coming here to take our jobs. They are coming here to take our women. There's a book called The Orchard Road Indian. If you have the time, you should read it. It is written by an expat Indian, The Orchard Road Indian. There he looks at these Indians who have come here, They are, many of them are well liked by the Chinese girls here, and he goes into some depth about talking about this. And I think all these things have combined. Salaries, we are losing our privileges, we are losing our women, all these things have come together, whether true or not, they've all come together.
Okay. Right. So, thank you for that.
Mine is not an academic analysis.
No. I mean you have a wealth of experience. As in, I think I probably disagree with you on Sika being the reason or one of the major factors for, well, not the only reason, but one of the major factors. But where I agree with you is, I think if the CMIO model is problematic, right? I do think it has value, but where the biggest threat to the CMIO model actually comes from the I category, because people do not understand the diversity within the Indian, especially the North-South divide, where there's a lot of antagonism between the North and the South, and people don't understand it. Just to put everybody as, I mean, there's a lot of tensions, as you know. Yeah.
Don't forget the caste divide.
Exactly. So there's a lot of tensions within the Indian community because of immigration, actually. Immigration. Yeah. So while all of that is true, I do not deny all of that is true. But I also think that we cannot deny that Indians and Malays are also the victims. But also, okay, I'm not saying that it's because Indians and Malays are more moral. No, it's just because of a numbers game. Indians and Malays can very well be capable of racism themselves as well, as you and I both know. Yeah. But it's a numbers game, right? So Indians and Malays in Singapore are subjected to that, irrespective of Sika. But anyway, Mr. Balji, we've gone almost 1.5 hours. Any final thoughts on anything that you want to say to a younger audience? Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify the point about Sika.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think I said it is because of Sika.
Okay.
The impression that is created, right?
Right.
Because if you go and talk to people, their understanding of Sika is really not there. No?
Right.
Of course, it's a huge document. There are so many elements to that document. But unfortunately, Sika has been hijacked.
Right.
Right? Because of various reasons, because it was never explained well before. And Sika is slightly different from the other FTAs, mainly because they allow the so-called inter-corporate transfers. I'm not sure whether that is in the other FTAs. So all these things have complicated the issue, but I don't think we can pin the blame totally on Sika, but it's an impression that is created.
Right.
Sorry, okay. I thought I should make that.
No, yeah. Thank you so much. Do you have any other thoughts on anything? Just final thoughts that you want to say? Or?
Final thoughts. I just want to say I'm sleepy.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Balji.
Is that a final thought?
That's a perfect concluding thought. Thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed this. We went for about 80 plus minutes. So
really?
70 plus minutes. Yeah. I think at least 70, 74, 75 minutes. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll have Teh Tarik in real life soon. Thank you so much. And
sure,
good night. Yes, okay. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.